was surprised. Hey, you go to school like this without shoes? So at that time, he bought me a pair of canvas shoes and made me wear them. Back then, they must have cost around 10 or 12 rupees. But here's the thing, they were white canvas shoes and they would quickly get stained. So what did I do? In the evening, after school was over, I would stay back for a while. I would go from classroom to classroom, collecting leftover pieces of chalk that the teachers had discarded. I would take the pieces of chalk home, soak them in water, mix them into a paste, and polish my canvas shoes with it, making them bright white again. For me, those shoes were a treasured possession, a symbol of great wealth. And I don't exactly know why. But from childhood, our mother was extremely particular about cleanliness. Perhaps that's where we inherited that habit too. Not sure how I picked up the habit of dressing neatly, but it's been there since childhood. Whatever I wore, I made sure it looked proper. Back then, as you can imagine, we didn't have any arrangements for ironing clothes. So instead, I would heat up water in a copper pot, hold it with tongs, and press my clothes myself. Then I'd head off to school. That's how I lived, and I found joy in it. We never thought about being poor or judged about how others lived or what their struggles were. We lived carefree, enjoying whatever little we had and kept working hard. Never once did we complain about these things. And all these aspects of my life, whether you call it fortune or misfortune, unfolded in such a way in politics that they started coming to light. Because when I was taking my oath as chief minister, TV reporters went to my village, questioned my childhood friends, went to capture videos of my home. That's when people started asking, who is this and what background he is coming from? Before that, very few knew much about my life. That's just how my journey has been. My mother possessed an innate spirit of caring for others' well being. It was woven into the very fabric of her being. She possessed knowledge of traditional remedies and healing practices and would treat children with these home remedies. Every morning before sunrise around 5 o'clock, she would start treating them. So all the children and their parents would gather at our home, little children crying, and we had to wake up early because of it. Meanwhile, my mother would continue treating them with care. This spirit of service, in a way, was nurtured through these experiences. A sense of empathy for society, the desire to do good for others. These values were instilled in me from my family. I believe that my life has been shaped by my mother, my father, my teachers, and the environment I grew up in.
There's a lot of young people listening to this that are truly inspired by your story. From those humble beginnings to the leader of the biggest democracy in the world. What can you tell to those young folks who are struggling, who are lost in the world, who are trying to find their way? What advice could you give them?
I want to tell all the young people the following. No matter how dark the night may seem, it is still just night, and morning is bound to come. That's why we need patience and self-confidence. Yes, the challenges are real, but I am not defined by my circumstances. I am here for a purpose, sent by a higher power, and I am not alone. The one who sent me is always with me. This unwavering faith should always remain within us. Difficulties are a test of endurance. They are not meant to defeat me. Hardships exist to make me stronger, helping me grow and improve, not to leave me feeling hopeless or discouraged. Personally, I see every crisis, every challenge as an opportunity. So, to all young people, I say, have patience. There are no shortcuts in life. At our railway stations, there hangs a sign for those who habitually cross the tracks instead of using the bridge. It reads, "Shortcut will cut you short." I would tell young people the same: shortcut will cut you short. There are no shortcuts in life. Patience and perseverance are essential. Whatever responsibility we are given, we must pour our heart into it. We should live it with passion, enjoy the journey, and find fulfillment in it. I truly believe that if this mindset is cultivated, it transforms life. Similarly, abundance alone is not enough. There is no guarantee of success. Even a wealthy person who indulges in comfort and idleness will eventually wither away. Instead, he must decide, yes, I may have resources around me, but I must use my abilities to grow them further. I must contribute more to society with my own strength. Even if I am in a good position, there is still so much more to do. Even if I am not in a good position, there is still so much work to do. That's what I believe. I have also noticed that some people tend to think, I've learned enough, that's it. But one should never let the student within them die. Learning should never stop. I believe that as long as I am alive, I must have a purpose. Perhaps I exist to keep learning, to keep growing. Now, my mother tongue is Gujarati, and we were not very familiar with the Hindi language, nor did we know how to speak it eloquently or communicate effectively. But as a child, I used to sit at my father's tea shop. And at that young age, I got the chance to meet so many people. And every time I learned something from them, I observed their ways of speaking, their expressions. These things taught me a lot. Even though I wasn't in a position to apply it then, I thought, if I ever get the chance, why not? Why shouldn't I present myself well? So I believe the desire to learn should always remain alive. And another thing I've observed is that most people dream about achieving something or becoming someone. They set big targets. And when they fall short, they feel disappointed. That's why whenever I get a chance to talk to my friends, I tell them, instead of dreaming about getting and becoming, dream of doing something. If you focus on doing something, and let's say your goal is to reach 10, but you make it to 8, you won't feel discouraged. You'll still work toward 10 with determination. But if your dream is only to become something and it doesn't happen, even your achievements may feel like a burden. That's why we must adjust our mindset in life. Instead of thinking about what I got or didn't get, the mindset should be, what can I give? Because true contentment doesn't bloom on its own. It grows from the depth of what you give.
And I should say that this young kid, one of the things I've dreamed of doing is to do this very thing to talk to you today. So this is very surreal. At 17, another fascinating part of your life, you left home and spent 2 years roaming in the Himalayas, searching for purpose, for deeper truth, for God. So not much is known about this period of your life. You lived a nomadic, minimalist existence. very much like a yogi, often sleeping without a roof over your head. What are some memorable spiritual moments, rituals, experiences from that time?
It seems like you've put in a lot of effort. Look, I I don't usually talk much about this, but I can share a few external aspects of it. I grew up in a very small town. Our life was all about being part of a community. We lived among people surrounded by them. That was just how life was. There was a library in the village, and I used to go there often to read books. Whenever I read something from the books, I often found myself feeling inspired, thinking, why shouldn't I shape my own life like that? That desire was always there. When I used to read about Swami Vivekananda or read about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, I would often wonder, how did they live? How did they build such remarkable lives? And for that, I constantly experimented on myself. Most of my experiments were physical in nature, testing my body's limits. For example, where I lived, winters weren't too harsh, but December nights could get quite cold. But still, at night, the cold would bite. It was natural. So sometimes I would decide to sleep outside, in the open, with nothing to cover myself, just to see how my body endures the cold. So from a very young age, I would often experiment with my body, and this became a regular thing for me. For me, going to the library, reading extensively, visiting the pond, washing the family's clothes, and swimming became part of my routine. Swimming was my main physical activity. All of these things were deeply connected to my life. Later, as I read Vivekanand, I became even more drawn to his teachings. One time I read about Swami Vivekanand. His mother was ill, so he went to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahans for guidance. He would argue with him, debate with him. In his early days, he would often argue with him, questioning everything intellectually. He said, my mother is sick. If I were earning, I could take better care of her. Sri Ramakrishna said, don't bother me with all this. Go to Goddess Kali. She is there. Ask her for what you need. And so, Swami Vivekanand went and sat before Goddess Kali's idol for hours, and he immersed himself into deep meditation. After a few hours, when he returned, Ramakrishna asked him, so did you request the goddess? Swami Vivekananda replied, no, I didn't. Ramakrishna said, go again tomorrow. She will fulfill your request. Ask her. He went the next day and then again the day after. But each time he found himself unable to ask for anything. His mother was unwell and he needed help. But when he sat before Goddess Kali, he was completely absorbed in her presence. And yet, he could not bring himself to ask for anything. Each time he returned empty handed. He told Sri Ramakrishna, I came back empty